Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on the importance of time recording and the art of delegation with Paula Wheatley from Charnwood Accountants and Business Advisors. For those of you who haven't joined our webinars before, my name is Lucy and I'm an assistant consultant with DG Legal. Just a bit of housekeeping before we begin. The slides from today's presentation will be sent over tomorrow and a recording of the webinar will be available. So if we do run over and you do need to leave, you will be able to watch the rest at another time. We are in webinar mode, so we can't see or hear any of you. So please do use the Q&A function so that Paula can address any questions you might have at the end of the presentation. So by way of a brief introduction to our speaker, Paula joined Charnwood Accountants in 2011 and holds a portfolio of clients that ranges across many industries, including property developers and solicitors' practices, solicitors being her specialist area of expertise. Due to spending most of her career working with solicitors, Paula has assisted many with the business development side of their practice, rather than just the compliance work. As a result, Paula has created a benchmarking tool that is available on the dedicated solicitors website, www.charnwoodforsolicitors.co.uk. This free tool provides valuable and practical advice on how to improve a firm's profitability. Over to you, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So thank you everybody for joining me today for this webinar on time recording and delegation. The webinar is aimed at practice managers, partners and senior solicitors looking to make efficiencies within the firm and their own work. I'll just take a few moments to give you some background to us as a firm. So we formed in 2004 and started working with solicitors quite quickly. We utilised a tax saving model which generated savings in excess of 5 million for clients. Unfortunately, this model is now closed, but during that time we did build a large number of solicitor clients which covered a vast range of the legal sectors, and so therefore we created Charnwood for Solicitors. I'm one of 5 partners at Charnwood and I head up the solicitors department. My main role here is in supporting business owners in making commercial decisions to increase their wealth, happiness and ensure they remain as tax efficient as possible. Today's webinar will help you to understand why it is important to time record even if you think your business is successful, and then what you can do with that time that you may find as a result. So just to let you know, I've allowed for 40 minutes for the webinar, but my talking time will be probably around 20 to 30 minutes. So I've left plenty of time for questions at the end, but obviously it will finish earlier if I don't get too many, just so you know when you can get away. Okay, so let's get stuck in. So the first question is, why do we bother time recording? So out of all of the firms that I look after, very few actually time record. And if they do, they don't do it to its best. Most of the time, if they don't see any obvious issues within the numbers, then they don't see the point in time recording. They'll see it as a waste of time and as something that will cause upset amongst the team. And yes, if the numbers do look okay, then I can see that. And so you do think, why bother? Sadly, though, there are also firms that aren't performing so well and don't see the benefit of time recording, even though it could solve some of their problems. So what I want to do now is to prove to you that just looking at the overview of the firm and thinking everything is okay isn't always the best plan. And if you do start looking more closely, you might realise that you could actually make more profit. So the numbers that I'm about to demonstrate can all be produced from reports within your own software. I know there's lots of different software available, but essentially they do all produce the same kind of information for you to be able to extract about your staff and the business performance. So actually the work I'm showing you next, it has very little involvement from you because you can produce it from your systems and then put it into a comprehensive management pack that will give you some good KPIs. The items I've highlighted in yellow on the slide you're about to see next are all typed from the reports you'll extract from your system, and then the rest is automatically calculated using formulas. And it's a management pack that we've evolved and put together for our clients to have access to, but it's something you could all create yourselves as well. So first of all, we need to start by looking at what we can achieve. So what I mean here is the capacity to bill. So you need to know about your staff, their working hours per week, their holiday entitlements, their charge out rates, and how much time you would expect them to be non-chargeable. When I say non-chargeable, I mean here, what percentage of the time do you allow for tasks that can't be charged against a client? So examples would be their CPD, as in their professional development stuff, training, networking maybe, or internal staff meetings, or just generally their own admin bits and bobs that need to be factored in. When all of these figures are multiplied together, you'll get their capability to bill on an annual basis. And from this particular example, you can see that the firm is capable of billing 6.4 million. You may look at this and think it's a very time-consuming task, but you actually only need to input this data in here once, and then it will just save, and you can tweak it and update it as you need to go when you're going along in future. So it's only a one-off time-consuming task. So taking this to the next stage, our management pack that we've created then gives summarised department performance, and this is all done from formulas for you. So you can actually see that as a firm, they achieved 6.6 million, which is a little more than the expected amounts, because we said that we were expecting just shy of 6.4 million. Generally, each department is performing better than expected. Therefore, as a firm, we could be very happy and just leave it on there. And on face value, I totally agree. So I mean, if you look here, the dispute resolution in the employment department are slightly lower than expected, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not big numbers. So yeah, we could leave it alone. However, if you dig a little further into the numbers, you can actually see that individually, not all of the staff are performing. So although a department looked like it was doing well, not everyone within it was. So looking at this example, for the family department, they were achieving well above target, but on closer inspection, we can see that the two staff members in particular are doing far better than one other. So in actual fact, Abby is performing far below expectations in this example, and so she's on a higher salary than her colleagues and not doing as much work, it would appear. What we also know about this particular example is that there's been some upset amongst the team, and there's rumours that Ellen and Samantha feel undervalued. And now we're looking at the numbers, we might think, this could be why, so we need to do something about it. So we need to have a better understanding of what Abby's up to on a day-to-day basis. And so how do we do that? With a timesheet. So in the example I've just showed you, I've looked at it from the perspective of a firm that's doing really well. And but just to show you really that it's still important to monitor those numbers closely. However, in many cases, we do have to start using these KPI spreadsheets as a tool for clients who are struggling. So I hope that you could see that in identifying department and individual weaknesses, we can do something about it just by producing those simple reports. But there's no point in identifying those weaknesses if we can't come to a conclusion as to why they're occurring, and that's where time recording comes in. Okay. So let's talk more about timesheets. So I recently heard a statistic that suggested that some firms have staff that bill as little as 4 hours a day. Speaking to the firms that I work with, I think that it is a fairly accurate statistic. And so that means that staff are probably not chargeable for around 50% of their working day. So imagine what you could achieve if they were to bill 80% of their time. So to make this work, you need to set charge out rates at a realistic level. Quite often we see that firms have really high charge out rates and they're just not achievable. And so the outcome is inevitably that under recoveries will occur on clients, or staff just don't record all of their time or hide it just to hide the under recovery. Also, very few firms record their time on fixed fee work, but just because it's fixed fee doesn't mean you can't look at inefficiencies. One of the biggest resistances that we come across is getting partners who head up the criminal and other legal aid departments and also conveyancing departments to embrace time recording, as they see it as irrelevant. But in actual fact, it's still crucial to know if these departments and the staff within them are making money for the firm. So if fixed fee work is losing money, having the data to hand can enable high-level decisions to be made. As an example, you may identify that new build conveyancing always takes longer than all other conveyancing, and you spent the last year or so making an under recovery on them. An outcome could be, having looked at all of your time recording, that you could create a separate fixed fee for new build conveyancing only that's higher than the others, and then you'll achieve an instant recovery. And just to add, most softwares that you do use will time record. What you may find is not all of them will look at chargeable time, so you'd need to assess it on a case-by-case basis within your own software providers. So what are the problems with time recording? There's a few obvious things that we see amongst firms where time recording isn't working. It's better to be aware of these so that you can start to build them into a policy and monitor them from the word go. So some of the common things that we find are too much time spent on admin tasks, not charging for travel time to and from clients, so they don't know what to do with that time, or it causes an instant under recovery. Pressure to make recoveries on jobs, so therefore the staff won't post all of their time. Also, the staff feel like they need to be fair to the client, so they don't always feel like they can put all of the time they've incurred down on the job. And also just a general lack of discipline within firms when it comes to applying the time recording policies. So if nobody's forcing people to do this, it just won't get done because it's not on people's list of priorities. So best practice, how do we make this work? So in order for it to work well, you need to implement a detailed recording policy. And all staff should adhere to it. It doesn't need to be huge, so one side of A4 and maybe a couple of pages of FAQ should be enough, and then it will just ensure that everybody's got a set guide on what they need to do and what is expected of them. So what would a good policy include? So as your first point, you need to say when to record the time. So as you're going along or at the end of the day, for example, I'd recommend as you're going along, because then you don't forget what you've done or lose where you've got to with your day, which can happen. Even if they just pen it down and then type it up at the end of the day, that could be fine, as long as they're making a note as they're going along. So next, you need to know what time to record. So this is where I'm saying record everything. All time spent in the office and working at home, because there's no point in recording just the chargeable time. If all you do is record the chargeable time, you still don't know what the staff are doing for the other 50% of the day when they're non-chargeable. And also, if they're taking work home, doing overtime, working in the evenings, record all of that as well. So the timesheet might end up with 120% working day, for instance. Next, how to record the time. So you need to explain how to split between matter-related items and non-matter-related items. So you need to set up some template non-charge time codes like annual leave, marketing, training, general admin, so that staff know where to put their non-chargeable information and it's all being done in the same place. Next, define how much time they can spend on bits and bobs per day, because nobody is 100% chargeable. So you need to build in some slack for their time spent daydreaming or popping off to the loo, those sorts of things. As a firm as Charnwood, we expect our team to be 80% chargeable. So we build in 20% per day for that slack. Okay. Next, you need to describe the time. So, for example, on your matter related, you'll put preparing for meetings, travelling to client call regarding progress update. Also, adopting this detailed narrative on your chargeable time could assist with justifying fees to clients at later dates as well. So it's always worth in plenty of detail. And the same applies for the non-chargeable time. So don't just post an hour to general admin with no description, because that's no help to anybody. post it and then put a narrative to say something about what you were doing. So for instance, assisting secretary with grammar in a letter, or IT issues because my screens wouldn't connect, just so we've got an idea of what's being done. And then finally, ensure all staff members do this, not just fee earners. So if only the fee earners are doing it, you can't look at the whole business performance. So it's really important that everybody takes part, including the support staff. Okay. And then the end result should be that you will help to improve your firm. So you can review staff inefficiencies, so you can identify where staff members are struggling and then train them accordingly if that's what's needed. You may also be able to bill clients more because you've got a clearer narrative on your timesheet about the work that's being done. It can assist with when to decide when each staff member's reach capacity, and so whether it's time to recruit. But the last and most major point that we see a lot of now is whether you've got the right number of support staff, and having a proper timesheet can really help with this. So historically, firms have always worked on a 1-to-1 ratio, so 1 support staff member to 1 fee earner. But as IT's evolved and things have moved on over time, it's become more like you'd have 2 or even 3 fee earners with 1 support staff member. So a much more different ratio than we've had previously. But excuse me, by time recording, you can see how hard those secretaries are working, and then therefore if you've got the right level of them per fee earner. Okay. And the most important outcome of all is it that gives you the opportunity to delegate, which moves on to our next section. So when you finish this exercise, in a lot of cases, you'll find that some fee earners don't have enough to do and support staff are being underutilised. So now you know who you'll be able to delegate to. So as a partner of a firm, you need to be able to set aside time from fee earning to work on the development of your business. If you don't do this, then you won't grow and you could become less profitable. It's the old saying of you need to work on the business, not in the business. So the easiest and most obvious solution is to pass some of the work onto your fee earners, and in turn, they will most likely pass some of the work onto their secretaries or lower level staff below them. So start by identifying which staff have capacity to pass work on to, but also look at which staff are chomping at the bit to develop up themselves, because these are the people that you need to start delegating to. So it can be fee earning tasks, or it can be other tasks that assist you with general development of the business as well. So there's always excuses about why you don't like to delegate. And you can see from the side, a lot of them revolve of it takes too long, you have to explain things, they might do it wrong, or you assume only you can do it. But they are excuses, and you can go round in circles, which is exactly what the slide suggests. But until you break that cycle, nothing will change. So take the time to explain it and provide some training, because in the longer term, it will help you and enable the staff to support the firm in future, which is all going to free up your time. So the other benefits of passing the work on too. So you'll be upskilling your staff, your fee earners and secretaries, which in turn, as I said, will benefit the entire firm, as it will create a good foundation of knowledge and skills and expertise to support your future growth. Also, by delegating key tasks to fee earners, you'll be passing on valuable learning opportunities to help your future successors, because you'll always, as a business, be looking at who's going to come up through the ranks and take over from you where you leave off. So you might be thinking, this is all well and good, but I have no idea how to go about this. So this is a section to show you how to delegate and what to delegate now. So to help you decide what to delegate, I would recommend using the Eisenhower matrix, which is a productivity, prioritization, and time management framework that helps you to decide what tasks to do, when to do them, and whether to delegate them. So it's essentially like an agenda. It was created by President Eisenhower to help him prioritize high task stake decisions that he faced in the US Army, when he was in the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO forces, and then when he was president as well. And then years later, an author called Stephen Covey made it popular when he published a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so therefore, it's now used widely by coaches to help develop their clients to time manage and make important decisions. So just to give you an idea of what it's all about, it's a 4-block quadrant, and you can see that the headings are urgent, not urgent, important, and not important. So the first quadrant, which is the upper left, these are the items that are both urgent and important, and so they demand your action right away. Items in this quadrant typically include crisis and issues with deadlines. An example that Covey used in his book was a fire in your kitchen. The second quadrant, which is the upper right, and these are the essential issues, but they're not urgent and therefore do not require your immediate action. So these are the items you'll want to schedule for a later date. Quadrant 2 items are typically tasks or projects that can help you personally or professionally to develop and help you to achieve the business goals. The third quadrant, which is the lower left, these are the urgent items that pop up and demand immediate attention, but they're just not necessary for you to do. They don't necessarily require your time, and therefore they can be delegated to somebody else. Examples of these will be requests from colleagues for help, emails marked urgent, where actually another fee earner knows the client and could deal with it. And if the content of these interruptions don't need you, then just delegate them. Okay. And then the fourth and final quadrant, which is the lower right, these are the items in your Eisenhower matrix that are not essential and not urgent. So in most cases, you can delete them from your list. The quadrant 4 items include things like scrolling through Facebook, checking Twitter, playing games. These are all okay if you've got time or need a break, but they shouldn't displace the more important priorities on those lists. And the matrix is also helpful for your team to use for their own time management. So it demonstrates the need to prioritize the items in quadrant 1 so that they don't get missed or ignored. Only once all of the items have been completed, or completed as much as possible, should they consider moving on to another task. So once quadrant 1 is complete, realistically, you should aim to spend some time on some of the quadrant 2 items, because then you can chip away at them gradually. And then the hope is that they don't end up becoming quadrant 1 items because you've left them for too long and then they've become time sensitive, so have become an urgent task instead of a non-urgent task. But it's the quadrant 3 and the quadrant 4, they're the ones that will really create your time savings, so the delegate and the deletes. If you can get rid of these off of your list altogether, you have more free time to focus on the non-urgent importance, so looking at your business plans and developing your business. So I'll just put this into a real life example for a firm of solicitors just to make it a bit clearer for you. So my urgent and important, you've got client deadlines in here, major staff issues. So you might have to deal with a staff grievance or sickness issues or an immediate need for recruitment, those sorts of things. Ad hoc emergencies, some client calls or some other calls, because there are a few clients that you will want to deal with just yourself and you don't tend to delegate them to fee earners. And also things like on a personal level, like collecting a sick child from school. These would be your urgent and importance. Then you've got your not urgent and important. So these are updating your business plan. So you will have a business plan, but do you look at it regularly? Do you make adjustments to it? Those items should be included here. Creating a time recording policy, which you'll have had to your list off the back of watching this webinar, hopefully. Reviewing your IT infrastructure. This should be done on a regular basis to ensure that you're always current and as efficient as possible, but you do need to set aside time to do it, so that's why it needs to go here. Linked to that will be becoming paperless, which a lot of firms are now trying harder to do since COVID's happened because there's more remote working. Staff mentoring and training, again, it's that whole develop them so that they can deal with the tasks in the delegate section for you. Also things like planning in pay reviews for the staff, networking, which is helping with the business development, and then on a personal level, it might be your exercise for yourself and things like that. Then you've got your urgent and not important. So these are your delegate items. So we've got here opening the post. Most of my clients, the partners still open the post, which we as the outside firm looking in always go, why do you do that? Why don't you just get the other staff to deal with that for you? Because it doesn't seem like a job you need to do. So that's what we'd put on there. Also returning client calls, if you know somebody else can deal with it, pass it on. Same with emails. Presentation preparation. So it might be that actually you probably want to put the bulk of the content into the presentation, but you could actually delegate to even a secretary the prettying of the presentation. So just making it look nice for everybody. You don't need to do that. Also, business advertisements, so writing blogs and things like that, you could delegate that to fee earners or even outsource it to a copywriter, because their time would be considerably cheaper than yours, even including the time to research. Also scheduling meetings, this could be done by your admin team or your secretaries. And same with reviewing client feedback. Again, secretaries or your admin team, practice managers, people like that could deal with those things for you. And then you've got the not urgent, not important, so the delete list. So social media is on here. Scrolling through social media and news channels takes up a shocking amount of time, and so by putting them into quadrant 4, it sort of helps you make that conscious decision to just stop doing it. And as I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with doing it if you're using it as a break. Just don't let it distract you from what you need to be doing. Same staff meetings and other client meetings with no purpose. I know sometimes you might have a weekly staff meeting scheduled in with the team, but create an ongoing agenda so you've always got things you need to talk about. And if there's nothing to talk about, either cut the meeting short or just don't have the meeting that week, because it's just wasting time. Same with talking to time wasters. The time spent gossiping can take up a lot of time, so block that out and you'll save yourself a lot of time. And then I've put on there overhauling your filing system. It might be something that's nice to do, it might be helpful, but is it essential, and is it actually taking up a lot of your time? And maybe that needs to go on the delegate list instead. Okay, so I'm at the point where I'm concluding now. So what I want to do is for you to ask yourself the questions that are on screen now. So do you spend a lot of time on tasks that are like writing letters, billing, or WIP write-offs? Do you have any fee earners who might be looking for an opportunity to progress within the firm? Could you pass on certain client management responsibilities to a fee earner? Are there any occasions where your support staff have nothing to do? And also, are they working hard enough? If you're answering yes to any or all of those questions, then you really need to think about some of the things that I've spoken about here today, because you could start delegating to them, and you may need to start looking closely at what they're doing to see if you need to do any culling or actually get more staff because they're working crazily and you don't want to burn them out. So I hope that gives you some food for thought. I've left time now for questions. I'll just bring up the questions and answer boxes if you just bear with me 1 second. I'm struggling. Lucy, I can't bring up the Q&A box. Is there any Q&As? Could you read them out to me, please?
Sure, I don't think
Sorry.
there are any at the moment.
Oh, they're not. I just wanted to double check. That's why it's not come up. I've kind of got some questions that you might have in the back of your heads. So where I've said recording 100% of the time and being chargeable to non-chargeable, as I said, as a rough guide, we suggested 80%. It's probably clear for staff when you do your policies, there's no punishment for it not being 80% chargeable. You just want to make sure that they know that you're looking at it so that you can make business decisions. And also, some staff might be more admin based than others. Like if you've got a head of a department, for instance, they might sit in on more management meetings with you as the partners. And so therefore their chargeability will probably be less than the staff that work underneath them. So you need to factor in a case by case basis for the chargeable time for each person within the firm, not just have a blanket figure across the firm. Okay. I don't think any questions have come through, but just to finish off for you guys, my details are here on this slide, and what we can offer you is a free no obligation meeting to discuss how we can help, and we can also do a free 2-hour benchmarking report and target setting session for all of the delegates that have listened today. So if anybody's interested in that, my email address is there, so please do drop me a message. But other than that, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Paula. We've actually had a question come through, if you're happy to.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So it's from Kathy, and she asks, what do you do as a fee earner if your firm has a manual time recording system which is tedious to operate?
So it's difficult because most of them would have some form of electronic one, because normally it'd be attached to your practice software. So if it is a manual one that's quite tedious to operate, you might want to do your own little bit of research to see if there is something within your software already that people could use. But I mean, it's just trying to find deficiencies in the way that if it's a spreadsheet, for example, you might want to create some categorization and formula data within it so it makes it simpler for the team to use. But it's just somebody having a bit of knowledge on their IT skills with, say, Excel, if that's what it is, to put something together for the rest of the team.
That's great, thank you. There's no more questions as far as I can see. So if you're happy, we'll wrap up there.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you all for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Paula. And thank you everyone for joining us today. As a quick reminder, the slides and a recording of the webinar will be sent over tomorrow. And this afternoon, you should receive an email from us asking to rate us out of 5 stars. So if you have enjoyed, please do leave some feedback, and any suggestions for future topics are also very welcome. And that just leaves me to say that our series of webinars continues in a couple of days on the 27th of April. We will be presenting a short 15-minute webinar on legal case management recommended suppliers as chosen by law firms with David Gilmore from DG Legal. Thank you again, Paula, and have a lovely afternoon, everybody. Take care.
Thank you all. Bye.